Hi, welcome to Israel First from our studios in Jerusalem. I'm Martin Blackham. I'm with my wife Nathalie Blackham. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us all over the world. We're doing the program live, so if you're watching by YouTube, you can send in your comments on the live comments. If you're watching at a later date, you can always email us at info@israelfirst.org. And in the news today, there's a total lockdown in Israel because of the situation with coronavirus. We mentioned it on the last program. Total lockdown, which is everything closed. It says the country is completely locked down. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that we are in a state of emergency, and Israel has recorded a record high of nearly 10,000 daily COVID-19 cases as total infections surge past 500,000 patients. There were 74,639 active cases in the country, including even in our grandson's school class, there were people who had been affected by coronavirus, with 1,027 people.
So you had to take a test too.
Yeah, it's affecting everybody. There were 1,027 people in serious condition, including 247 on ventilators. The death toll stood at 3,704. Meanwhile, as the British strain of the coronavirus continued to spread, with some estimates saying it was responsible for about 2,000 cases in Israel per day, the Health Ministry was reportedly considering reducing the amount of time of contact time needed with a confirmed carrier to send an individual into isolation.
Sure, and I heard that they have also the South African strain.
Right, and there's another strain as well, the South African strain. It says, in light of the highly contagious variants, Israel health officials were considering requiring isolation for anyone who has spent 5 or 10 minutes with a confirmed carrier instead of the current 15 minutes.
Which means so very important, because we know we have a lot of friends who wants to come here. Right now, no place for opening the sky, so no tourists are coming yet here.
No, Ben Gurion is closed. We're very sorry, but everything is shut. Hotels are closed. So at the moment, with the total lockdown, at the moment we are closed to tourists. But you still have us if you'd like to keep informed about Israel news. And not just that, but you can interact with us. You can interact live on the program. If you're watching by YouTube, you can interact by email if you're watching at a later date on info@israelfirst.org. You can visit the website www.israelfirst.org. Please communicate with us. We do send out a weekly newsletter where you can get the news and everything that's happening in Israel.
And Martin is doing some very good news every day on the website. So you can go on the website and see, we don't want to flood you with news, but Martin is really working hard to give some news every day, so you can go on the website. And I'm sorry, another thing also. Now we are also on Telegram, so if you want to receive, like it's me who are giving also some news, people who wants to have in another way than the website, so you can come on our maybe info@israelfirst.org, and you tell us that you want to be in a connection with us, and we will sort out the things to be connected with you.
And if that doesn't work, we've also got the comment box on the contact box on the website. You can contact us. Well, also in the news today, as we've come into the studio and to bringing you news from Israel, it's Israel targets Syria with airstrikes, according to reports. Israeli warplanes targeted the Syria-Iraq border, taking out Iranian weapon supplies. The strikes were aimed at dozens of warehouses and sites belonging to pro-Iranian militia and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, throughout the area, according to a local Syrian news source, Deir ez-Zor 24.
So this is the problem, is like Israel has to attack Syria because Iran is going into Syria, and obviously we have to defend the borders here. Yeah,
the Israeli Air Force carried out more than 18 attacks against multiple targets in an area stretching from the eastern town of Deir ez-Zor to the Al-Bukamal desert at the Syrian Iraq border. And this is according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, who are observing what's happening in Syria, particularly with abuses of the Syrian government. 2 residents in Deir al-Zor city said they could hear the distant sound of huge explosions, apparently from arms depots destroyed in the raids. Now what's happening is that Iran is attacking Israel by proxy. They're not actually doing it from Iran, from its borders, but they're coming into Syria. They are using Hezbollah. They are weaponizing Hezbollah. They are coming against Israel in the north of the country. And it's not just threatening the security of Israel, but it's also destabilizing the Middle East. It says a senior United States intelligence officer with knowledge of the attack told the Associated Press that the raids were carried out with intelligence provided by the United States and targeted a series of warehouses in Syria that were being used as a part of the pipeline to store and stage Iranian attacks and Iranian weapons. So Israel is having to take this action to stop Iranian attacks from the north, and it's extremely a serious situation. Now, not only in the north but in the south there have been problems. Israel has had to deploy to the south because of threats from Yemen, the Iron Dome and Patriot batteries. They've been seen in the Eilat area, which is the extreme south of the country. If you have a map of Israel, Eilat is really the bottom.
And not only that, this is one of the first time, it's not very often that they have to dispatch this defense force. Right,
the Iron Dome is usually is an air defense weapon to protect Israel against missile attacks.
So it's usually more in Gaza and in the north.
On the border of Gaza and also on the border of the north. Yeah. It has been in other areas, even in Jerusalem, not so far from where we're filming today. They've had to use an Iron Dome during the Gaza war. Now, the Israeli militaries deployed the air defense batteries around the southern city of Eilat amid concerns of an attack from Iran-backed Houthi militia in Yemen. The move comes on around the first anniversary of some attacks that America carried out against Iran, and Iran has indicated plans to exact revenge for these 2 high-profile killings. The Israeli military assessed that such retaliation was likely to come from an Iranian proxy such as the Houthis, a Yemeni group that has conducted a number of attacks over the years against Tehran's other rival in the region, Saudi Arabia. So this is a very serious situation, and so Israel has to be on the defense. We have basically had a time of peace. Israel always has to be careful with its borders. Even though there have been some very good developments, some very important developments, which we mentioned on previous programs with the Abraham Accords. Now, one of the big news that's come in is the CEO of Parler, the big big social media giant, says the service will be down longer than expected, will not be available for a longer time than they originally expected. So the social network that supports Donald Trump and his followers, and indeed we've had an account on there, one of the few to do so, has been shut down after Amazon suspended it from its web hosting services. Google and Apple have already removed Parler from their respective app stores, and the service is completely inaccessible at the present time.
This is interesting. You know, when you speak about all of that, we need to try to understand what's happening in the world. And Parler was very much for people to speak, for freedom of speech. And we can see that a lot of this thing is taken. But you know, I was listening to a rabbi.
It's an attack on free speech, basically.
Yeah, it is. And we need to say that. But you know, like again, looking in the biblical set, you know, of view, you can see that Gog and Magog also. I was hearing a friend who was speaking about that, saying that there is also something about the media, and it's a war of media. I mean, we know that we've been in this war of media for many years now, but like we can see the intensity now, and everybody can see it, but we need to really understand that this is part of the bigger picture, and that we need to have this bigger picture to be able to understand what's up. And may I give you the story that I find already? I find a story, you know how I like about the Hebrew language, and that God has like if the world and New World Order also has a way of looking at what they want to do, plan. God has a plan, and who's been in place already for a long time. So when you look, like even Abraham was a rebel at the time where everybody has many gods, and he started to believe in the true God. And for that, he had really to fight, and he was the only one, and after his family, and then after Israel was also the family who has, we call it the Hebraic faith, and like Christianity and the Muslim, if we want to look, also are also monotheism faith, because they trust in one God, which is not just one God, but he's our creator, and he wants to have a relationship with us. We need to speak about these things, okay? So in all these things, you can see that there is, in this battle of Gog and Magog, is a battle for truth. Okay, and like the Hebrew language is in all of that. So I find a story in Israel 365 News, and he's speaking about Yoni Tzadok, which is interesting because his name Tzadok is like Tzaddik is a righteous man. So it's interesting to know his name. But this man is training people, Kohanim and Leviim, which is like the priest and the Levites, who were like working in, they are descendants of the one who are working in the temple. But he said, but this is not just for them, it's for whoever wants to know how the temple will work. Because the temple won't be just for the Jewish people, as is written in Isaiah 56, it will be the house of prayer for all nations. So there is like some things changing, that is not just Abraham now and his family, but it's like for the nations. And he said in Genesis that Abraham will be a blessing for all the families, okay? Mishpacha is a family. So anyway, this unit Tzadok was helping the people also to speak the language of who was speaking before, which was Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language. So you have to understand that when, right at the beginning, God was using the Hebrew language for creating the world, okay? And it was called Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language. So you think even us, when we speak, we need to be very careful, because when we create something with our mouth, is very important. When sometimes I listen to some YouTube or what's happening even in America, and when you hear the vile language that people are using, ouch, you know, is really disturbing. Also that the people, we are made in the image of God. You are made in the image of God. I'm made in the image of God. Whoever who are human is made in the image of God. And the interesting thing with the Hebrew language, you can see like Abba, father, Ima, mother, Achi, my brother, Achot, my sister, what else? Like Adam, the name for man, Ish and Isha, which is man and women. All these names start by Aleph, which is the first letter. And the first letter, I can show it to you, by the way, in the Hebrew language, so you can know this letter here, Aleph, is also representing God. I mean, you can find a lot about it, like when you do a bit more research. But again, you don't need to do, it's not for experts, okay? There is really thing that has given, funny enough, I wrote also a book, which is called The Beauty of the Hebrew Language. Maybe I put it here. And
you have to tell them how they can get hold of the book.
Yeah, you can get it by going onto our website, israelfirst.org, and you can buy it for people who speak English, French, and German.
And there's an e-book as well now.
That's it, and there is also an e-book. And so it's like really to introduce us, because you see, when what's happening right now, there is confusion, there is a lot of transformation in the world, like all around. It's not just in one country, and we can see that God is transforming. I mean, God is using all these things to make us saying, hey, I'm doing something new, and at the end it will be good. Even right now it's not so easy. So we can find a lot of things about the Hebrew language, and this man, Yoni Tzadok, is really calling people to really understand that the temple will be there for everybody, that it will be something beautiful for us to be able to connect together and with God. And he's speaking about Lashon Hara, sorry, not Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is the bad language, Lashon HaKodesh, which is the holy language. And it's written also in Zephaniah 3:9, and I speak about it in the book also. And that God will give us again a pure language. So there is a lot of future good things that are going to happen, Martin.
Right, and if you're watching today and you'd like to support the work that we're doing, you can do that via the website. Go to www.israelfirst.org, and you can see on the right hand side that there's a donate button. If you have any difficulties at all donating, then please email us at info@israelfirst.org. Well, one of the things that's amazing is there's in the middle of everything that's happening, there's some amazing discoveries, and there's a new bee species has been discovered in Israel. Amidst decreasing global bee populations, new findings provide optimism for pollination and bee habitat conservation. A new species of bee unique to the sand dunes of Israel's coastal plains has been identified and described by Alain Pauly, a taxonomist from the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences in Brussels. The species, the special species, is a type of bee. It's a new type of bee, especially exciting because of the decline of the world bee population, which is putting crop pollination in danger. Crop pollination relies mainly on managed colonies of domesticated honeybees. However, wild, unmanaged bees also are highly effective in pollinating natural and agricultural systems, and native bees are the most important wild pollinator group. This is why researchers have been trying to conserve natural bee habitats in Israel's coastal plains, where large-scale eucalyptus plantings have caused dramatic changes in habitat characteristics and decreased local biodiversity. So an absolutely amazing development there with the bee population of Israel.
Which is interesting also because Israel is called the land of milk and honey. So honey, I mean saying that, yeah, honey, they were saying, oh, this is interesting because devash is honey, but they were saying also that the honey was speaking at the time in the Bible was more the honey from the tamarim, from the dates, which is interesting. But obviously we know bees are so important for the crop and to have good crops and pollination.
There's date honey available in Israel actually if you're interested, and when you can get here you can actually get date honey. Maybe you can get it from the internet, I don't know, but it's very good. Israel is to okay 800 new homes, settlement homes. That's a very big development because the construction of Israel, the expansion of Israel, a lot of settlements, Jewish communities need to have new houses. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says plans to be approved by Defense Ministry panel including 100 housing units in Tel Menashe, the hometown of a woman who was killed in a recent terror attack. After a meeting next week, the Civil Administration High Planning Committee will approve the construction of 500 housing units in the Jewish communities of Itamar, Bethel, Shavai Shamron, Oronit and Givat Ziv, Israel's public broadcaster Kan reported. In addition, the committee is also advancing plans to build 100 units in Tel Menashe and more than 200 in Nofi Nehemiah.
So it's important. This is like in Samaria, as we call Samaria, which is the mountain of Israel in the north of Jerusalem.
That's just north of us.
That's right. Yeah. And it's very important because it's like there is a lot of young family. They have a lot of children, and it's like places who are called sometimes settlement they need to grow, and so they need to have houses for the people, because very often the people who live in these places, they love the quality of life that they have, and so the family wants to stay close to each other.
Yeah, and if they haven't got anywhere to go, then it's really a problem, because as Nathalie says, they want to be together but they can't because there's no houses. Tel Menashe in the northern west of Samaria was the hometown of Esther Horgan, who was murdered recently in a terror attack. Her husband has called for increased settlement construction following her killing. A statement from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office later said plans for some 800 houses would be approved or advanced, including the 100 units in Tel Menashe and over 200 in Nofi Nehemiah. And Netanyahu said, "We're here to stay. We're continuing to build up the land of Israel." And another exciting development has been in the medical field. Israel is really a country which has amazing technology, amazing technological advancements. A lot of companies have their research and development here. Microsoft and other companies do their research and development here. I think it was even the cell phone was developed here. And it says the Israeli technology aims to transform patient care for the better. The imaging AI allows a clinician or a doctor to see the progression of COVID-19 in the lungs and helps the doctor decide if the patient needs to go to the ICU, needs a ventilator, or if the condition of the patient is not critical. Ohad Arazi, CEO of Zebra Medical Vision Limited in Israel, said that artificial intelligence, commonly known as AI, can transform patient care by teaching computers to read images and automatically provide diagnosis, insights, and better prioritize the cases that are coming into the hospital. The imaging AI allows a clinician to see the progression of COVID-19 in the lungs and helps the doctor decide if the patient needs to go to the ICU, needs a ventilator, or if the condition of the patient is not critical. Early detection measures can impact the patient's quality of life by treating conditions early through medication, physical therapy, and lifestyle. It empowers physicians to improve their care, and it's amazing how many technological advances have been made in Israel, and this is just another one which is improving and transforming the life of patients in hospitals. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, we have a situation of pressure in Syria with Iran, but also in the south there's a pressure from the Gaza border, and it says there was a terror attack on the Gaza border. Terrorists from Gaza fired at Israeli soldiers operating at the border near Kisufim. No Israeli troops were injured. However, a military vehicle was damaged. In response, an IDF tank attacked a Hamas terrorist position. Residents of southern Israel reported that following the attack, they heard Israeli fighter jets overhead. IDF engineers, by the way, were working in the area to clear vegetation that's used to conceal improvised explosive devices, IEDs. They can be hidden in the vegetation, and then a soldier will walk on them and will be seriously injured or killed because of the explosion. IEDs are one of the terrible things that soldiers have to face, and clearing the vegetation makes sure that the soldiers can see what's there by the fence. And it was whilst they were doing that. Well, you know, Israel is always trying to help. Nathalie, they're always trying to help with Gaza and these situations, even when they're being attacked. And an Israeli firm has provided Gaza with drinking water from the air. Absolutely amazing. Water coming from air. WaterGen solar-powered generators can produce 5,000 to 6,000 litres of potable water per day, depending on humidity. While not enough to meet the enclave's complete needs, it's a start, said a Palestinian machine operator. The densely populated...
It's amazing, and it's clean water, which is very important. Because
fantastic.
Gaza, yeah.
It's a fantastic development, and it says the densely populated Gaza Strip has long lacked sufficient drinking water, but a new Israeli project helps ease the shortage with a solar-powered process to extract potable water straight from the air. WaterGen, that's the Israeli company who's done this, has atmospheric water generators that can produce 5,000 to 6,000 litres of drinking water per day, depending on the air's humidity. With just a few machines operating in Gaza, WaterGen is far from meeting the demands at the moment for 2 million people. However, it's a start, said an engineer working with the Palestinian civil society group Damor, which operates one of the machines. So Israel is always trying its hardest to help in the different areas. Well, another, as we mentioned before, Iran it's really a problem for Israel with Syria, the Syrian border, and acting in proxy. Well, Iran itself in its own country is installing 1,000 more centrifuges. Just the day after the upping of Iranian enrichment to 20%, Islamic Republic's atomic chief announces steps to increase production further. After Iran confirmed that it has stepped up its uranium enrichment in breach of the 2015 nuclear deal, the head of Iran's Atomic Energy Agency said the Islamic Republic is in the process of installing 1,000 new centrifuges to help increase production. It says that this is the person from there has said that Ali Akbarsali said that also Iran had increased its supply of yellow cake, a precursor to enriched uranium, 8-fold in the past 2 years. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Iran's latest nuclear move proves it's seeking to build an atomic bomb, a claim that Iran has so far denied, Natalie. And one of the developments that's happening in Israel at the moment is...
I know, by the way, I read a news this morning that the IDF is planning a response about that, and in three sections, but they are like working obviously non-stop 24 hours to secure the people in Israel and around the world.
Well, one of the amazing things is as I said before, is the technological developments in Israel, and Israel is always looking to change or improve, and they're looking now to bring Tesla cars to Israel, Natalie. So this is going to be a great improvement. Well, it's been great to be with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to visit the website www.israelfirst.org, and remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.